Today we are talking max gear score 725 and what you can do to obtain 725 gear score items in New World. Before we jump in, two quick notes. First is that for most people, 700 gear score is perfectly fine. What I would recommend that you do as soon as you hit level 65 is to come in here to the trading post, go in to select whichever kind of armor you like to use. For me, I use heavy armor. Choose the filters tab, click and input the perks that you want. I always say that health and enchanted ward are two perks that you really should try to obtain for almost any build, especially for tanks though. That's what I like to use. Make sure you select the attributes that you want. Set a minimum gear score if you want. For me, I usually, because of the state of the gear, I would say 690 is about the minimum you should even go. But if you're just starting out, maybe 675 wouldn't be a bad one as well. Click apply and then go ahead and sort it by gear score. You can see that there are already two tabs up, and I made it very refined so that the only gear I see is that has enchanted ward as well as health, and I still have 2 pages worth of gear to select from. Go ahead and do this and fill in every one of your slots as well as your primary weapons as well. Be sure to clear out those perks whenever you move into the weapons, because the perks are different for the weapons. And go ahead and buy 2 weapons as well, just to get yourself started. But we'll go ahead and replace those 2 weapons pretty quickly, but just go ahead and pick them up anyways, just to start off. The second note I'll make is that I will not be talking about drops from the raid or the sandworm. Those 2 pieces of content do drop gear above 700, but they are also very difficult. And although I want to make a note of it here being an option to get 700 plus gear score items, I think it is outside of what most people will want to do or even be able to do in this game. Those 2 things are for people looking for that most challenging thing to do, just like level 3 mutation dungeons. Most people can stop at level 2 mutations and be just fine. And most people will also not do the raid or sandworm and be just fine. Or they'll wait until they're closer to 725 and then try those things. If you notice I left anything out, you have a way of getting 725 gear score items that I didn't add. Be sure to add it down below in the comments for other people. But other than that, let's jump right in. To start off, once you have 700 gear score items and you are level 65, you should make your way down to the Cutlass Keys. This area is where we will be spending the next little while in order to upgrade our gear to 725. There are a couple different missions that you can do in this area, and I definitely recommend that you start by picking up those because they can start you off with some mystic doubloons, so you don't even have to farm for them right off the bat. As soon as you come to the Well of Fortune and you have at least 5 doubloons, you should craft this glittering golden key. This golden key gives you access to open up a chest that can be found just outside the PvP zone in Cutlass Keys. You'll notice these little pillars here that create the zone for PvP. And on these pillars, there's a chance that this chest will spawn and you can open it using these keys. I haven't seen the chests appear in between these pillars at all, so stick to trying to go to the pillars. The 2 that I go to first usually is this pillar and this pillar, because I find that chests are pretty consistently on those 2. Open this chest and get your 500 free doubloons for the week. You're now in a net positive of 495, starting off good. Before we get too much into that though, let me add the second way of getting doubloons. And if you come in here to the recruitment tab, which even if you are a solo player, I do recommend you use this at least a little bit. You should notice some people saying XCK in this. And what that means is that they are trying to do an elite chest run in the Cutlass Keys. These happen at least half a dozen to a dozen times a day. And they start right here from the Admiral's Shrine. If you see people spamming XCK in chat, go ahead and type it as well to join a raid group. It doesn't require you to have a microphone or talk or communicate with anybody if you are a solo player, but it ensures that you get shared loot and shared experience from the encounter. Go to the Admiral Shrine, make your way to this bridge right here where everybody else will join up, and then follow the group as they make their way into the Cutlass Keys zone and collect all of the various different elite chests that are in there. You should leave the elite chest zone area out of this graveyard at this shrine with around 600 doubloons easily. Doing that 7 days a week will get you well over 4,000 doubloons a week from just doing a 30 to 45 minute chest run in the Cutlass Keys. It is a great thing to do when you are trying to farm doubloons. Now, once you have those 600 doubloons, you'll come back to this Well of Fortune, and the first thing you're going to want to come to buy is this Gold Cursed Epic Crate. You can buy 3 of them a day for 105 doubloons, and this crate has a chance of dropping 725 gear score items. You may also get crafting material, which is a little bit aggravating, and you could also get lower end gear, but so far from opening these up, I have received a couple items at 725, or at least close to 725. So it's a great way to get those items. The rare crate, I don't believe drops up to 725, but they can drop gear as well that is in the 700s possibly. So go ahead and pick up 5 of those as well every day. While you're here, this doesn't have to do with 725 gear, but I do recommend picking up some of these items in the lower area, especially honing stones, because these can be pretty expensive on the trading post, but you can get 5 of them for 10 doubloons. So cheap. Pick them up along with the orbs. While we're on the topic of chests, I will mention that these chests here will drop guaranteed 725 legendary items, but do note that they have a chance of dropping outside of what you might want. All of these gear pieces can drop light, medium, or heavy. Now they are weighted to drop for your specific that you are wearing, but just because you're wearing heavy doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get heavy. You might get a light piece of armor. Additionally, just because you have a great sword equipped doesn't mean you might not get a warhammer from this chest. So keep that in mind. They are pretty expensive, and I do recommend you doing them later on once you have an excess amount of resources, especially the golden coconuts, which for about the first 4 weeks, your golden coconuts are going to be used up in the next few tips. So after about 2 or 3 months, when you maybe have a stock and inventory of these, maybe then come and buy these chests, but don't do it initially. For the next section, this is the part that I will recommend you use your first 1,500 doubloons on outside of buying the chests and the other resources below. And that is come into this section and buy the 2 weapons that you use the most. If you were lucky enough to go ahead and already farm for your artifact, which we'll touch up on artifacts in the next section, then you can go ahead and just buy one of these. But I do recommend buying the 2 that you use the most initially, because it does drop at 710 gear score. So use the 700 gear score items that we bought in the first section initially, and pretty soon after that, buy the 710 gear score items that you use the most here. Now, after you have gotten another 1,200 doubloons that are just sitting in your inventory, we'll move to the next section, and that is upgrading that weapon. You can come in here to the Apex named items section when you have the item that you purchased in your inventory or in your storage shed, and with an additional 1,250 doubloons, a golden coconut, which we just mentioned earlier, and 300 dark matter, you can upgrade this weapon to a 725 gear score weapon. Now, I'm not going to get too much into the golden coconuts and how to obtain them, because I'm sure there are plenty guides out there on how to do it, but this is dropped from the first chest that you loot inside the PvP zone. So I do recommend that you venture into the PvP zone at least once a week. Go in, maybe log on at a time that's not very populated, so early in the morning or later in the evening. Open your first chest. If you get killed after you open it, it's okay. You don't drop the golden coconut and you are good to go. I also think the first 100 doubloons that you loot from the PvP zone don't get dropped either. So that is a good note to know as well. But once you have about 4,000 doubloons, you are able to buy the 2 weapons and upgrade them both, along with some dark matter and some golden coconuts. So note that this will take you 2 weeks, because you can only get 1 golden coconut per week to complete this first test. But at this point, you now should have 2 725 guaranteed weapons. I will make a final note on these 2 weapons, because I'm sure somebody will say it down below. And that is that if you don't do PvP, one of these perks is a dead perk, but the boost that you get by having a weapon at 725, in my opinion, is worth it. If you are doing things such as OPR and Arena, your gear score doesn't matter anyways. So even if you're using a 500 gear score sword that is better, go ahead and use that because it will scale up to 700. But in this instance, for using this out in the open world, I think it's a great way to go ahead and get a 725 gear score item easy. So I do want to mention it here. Before we jump into the artifact section, if you've liked the video so far and you feel I have given you any value, I would greatly appreciate a like. And if you have anything you would like to add it down below in the comment section. Or if you found something very useful from the video, I would greatly appreciate it if you left in the comments as well. As always, while you're down there, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Let's keep going. Segueing into our next section while still using the Well of Fortune, at the very top, you'll notice that for 6,000 doubloons, you can buy 2 artifacts. Artifacts drop at 700 gear score and can be upgraded to 725. And I'm not going to get into exactly how to get them because there are plenty of guides out there that cover all of the different artifacts and how to obtain them. So go check out those websites or those guides to see which artifacts you want so that you can farm for them. But note that you can equip 1 armor, which includes shield, 1 weapon, and 1 jewelry artifact. So you should be farming for 3 artifacts as soon as possible. But the Well of Fortune is a great way to be able to go ahead and buy 1 of those artifacts if you are looking for an easy way to get one. But once you have a couple artifacts in your inventory, we'll go ahead and move into the next section, and that is upgrading them. Fast travel to one of the in-game areas. For this example, I will be going to the Elysian Wilds, but you can also go to the north sections as well. And in these zones, we will be accessing a crafting bench called the Gypsum Kiln. When you access your item in your inventory, you'll notice there are a couple different missions that are given to you. And the very last one is to upgrade the item at the Gypsum Kiln. While this item is in your inventory, so not equipped, as well as not equipped to one of your gear sets, you can go up to the Gypsum Kiln, access it, and at the very, very bottom, you will notice a new section that has your artifact listed. There are 2 different options. The first one is to keep it at 700 gear score, but determine your final perk. I would recommend ignoring this section because it requires a massive amount of materials. And you should immediately do the last option, which upgrades the item to 725 and gives it that 3rd perk, which you can choose a crafting mod to designate which perk it is. When you come into the Apex crafting section, you will need to uncheck the owned box, and you can notice that you can use a golden coconut as well. Upgrade your artifact to 725, and if you do that for each of the 3 artifacts as well as your 2nd weapon, within the first 4 weeks, you have a guaranteed way of having 725 gear score items in 4 of your slots, as well as the possibility of having a wide number of other 725 gear score items that drop from the various different chests that we've been buying along the way. As a final note, I will say that if you come into the activities tab, the 3v3 arena and outpost rush does drop a box for the first few times you do it. And this box does have a chance at dropping 700 plus gear score items. I did a 3v3 arena earlier today, opened up the box and received a 705, I think, earring from it. It does have a chance of dropping 700 plus gear score items from that. And that's all I have for you guys on the 725 gear score topic. I believe I've touched base on all the various different ways that you can get 725 gear score items, but to recap once more, please note that 700 is just fine. And for most people, hitting 700 gear score and then working on your best in slot gear items at 700 gear score will be perfectly fine. And I would actually say that having 3 best in slot perks on a 700 gear score item is infinitely better than having a 725 gear score item with maybe only 1 or 2 best in slot perks. So be aware of that when you are choosing your items. And do note that if you are doing arena or OPR, you can have even 600 gear score items and they will be scaled to 700, as well as if you have a 725 gear score item, those will be downscaled to 700. So in many situations, it will be better for you to have a 700 or even under 700 gear score item. So take that into consideration. And if you are hunting for that 725 gear score title, then these are good methods to reliably hit that mark. I hope you guys found this useful. As always, be sure to check out my New World playlist for other guides. Like, comment, do all that YouTube stuff, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. I hope to see you guys in Aeternum.